that was a 1:21, almost flat for Lando Norris, and Naomi Anthony, you know, it was very, very solid.
It was such a smooth lap. I mean, you could see the steering input there. There's only a few very slight corrections, but everything there just looks almost easy. From the driver's perspective, you know that he's having a good time in that car and it's doing exactly what he wants it to do. So hats off to him, but it's so tight out there. It's so tight in terms of times.
I mean, it really is. I mean, we did think that this was going to be a McLaren circuit. When you look at last year, they took 47 points away from this weekend with a first and a third in a sprint and then a second and third in the race to Ferrari's 13. It's just the fast-flowing nature of it, as Lando was saying. It's just, you've got to cling on for dear life, but he clearly loves it as well.
Yeah, it's his type of track as well. He loves to send the car to the apex. He's quite aggressive in how he uses curbs as well. You have to do a lot of that around this track. And the car, in its max downforce settings, seems to be a lot more comfortable here on this high-speed, fast-flowing circuit compared to where we were last week in Vegas with the low downforce, the skinniest wings we run of the season.
OK, let's hear from his teammate, Oscar Piastri, who finished in third. But first of all, team principal Andrea Stella.
Well, Andrea, busy day, busy evening, actually, but it ended in a positive result.
Yeah, P1, P3, certainly better than what we've had in Vegas to start from the grid. A little bit of lap time lost by Oscar in his laps, because effectively, if we look at his best corners, he's on par with Lando. But it was difficult in these conditions with still some winds around to put perfect laps together, so no problem. P1, P3 is good. The car has been competitive in P1 here in qualifying session, especially with the medium tires, which is important for the sprint race and for the race itself. At the same time, we have to acknowledge that Mercedes are within the same tenth of a second. Ferrari are very close, so not unexpected, but it's certainly not an easy ride. It's very compact. We have to work hard to gain the points tomorrow.
OK, well, thanks for running us through it. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
How do you feel with that result?
Reasonably happy. Wasn't the greatest lap of my life, but I think with these conditions it's very tough, and I'm pretty sure everybody will be saying that. So struggled a little bit at the start, but I felt like I was in the groove at the end. Just very fine margins, but yeah, this track's pretty mega to drive around. There's a lot more grip this year than last year, so the high-speed sections are a lot of fun.
You mentioned the conditions there. Can you just talk us through what it is like out there on track? Because the temperature has dropped quite a bit, the wind is strong. What is it like for you guys out there?
I mean, to be honest, wasn't too different to practice. Yeah, the wind has dropped a little bit, makes the car a little bit easier to drive, but yeah, everything's a bit easier than it was 12 months ago here. So no, it feels fun. It's a really awesome track. Especially the high-speed sections, which is pretty much most of the track. So it's, yeah, a lot of fun out there.
Well, good luck tomorrow and well done today. Thank you, Oscar.
Thanks.
I wonder, if he gets ahead of George Russell and they're running 1-2, it's a McLaren swap, and they own one, don't they? They own a sprint victory, Oscar.
I guess they probably do, but I think Oscar's going to want to win it outright. I don't think he's going to want to switch it, but they've done quite well today. Obviously, George just squeezing his way in between them. But tomorrow there's only really a maximum of 15 points. So that would be the best possible outcome for McLaren tomorrow. So the margins are quite fine tomorrow, but they need to just do what they can to make sure Ferrari stay behind them. And they got the better of them in qualifying. And that's not what Ferrari would have wanted.
But it's good news for McLaren, isn't it, in the Constructors' Championship, that at least one of the Mercedes is up there in front. And Max is up there as well in front of the Ferraris. But I never thought that would be the case. I thought perhaps McLaren would just topple Ferrari here in this sprint qualifying, but I didn't expect the other players to get involved as well, to be ahead of the Ferrari. So that's gonna annoy Ferrari a little bit here, because it seems to be going more McLaren's way. Like we suspected, this would be McLaren's circuit.
Just a reminder, as far as the constructors are concerned, McLaren need to be 45 points ahead at the end of this weekend to be assured of the constructors' title, which would be a 1-2 tomorrow, a 1-2 on Sunday, and the fastest lap, just to be sure. That's the best case scenario for them. But it's as Anthony was saying there, it's the most positive start to the weekend they could have had.
It is. Look, as you say, 45 points essentially is what they need to walk away with from here to make sure that they've completely sealed it. But they'll be really positively surprised by this. It's very tight, though. As I said, the top 4 teams all within 0.4 of a second, other than Perez, obviously, who seem to be a lot further down. But, you know, the race will be another thing. You can overtake around this track. You've only got one DRS zone, so let's see what happens tomorrow. And then, of course, you get to reset again before qualifying with the setup, so who knows how they can turn this weekend around for Ferrari.
So lead at the moment is 25 points, by the way, for McLaren. Let's get the other side of that constructors' story and hear from both the Ferrari drivers.
Really pushing out there, giving it absolutely everything you could. How are you feeling after that?
Well, not good, because when you give it all, obviously, and we are only, I think, P4 and P5, it's not great, considering how important this weekend is for us. But let's say that for whatever reason, FP1 was a lot above our expectations. This, I will say, is in line with what we expected. So we're coming back to reality. But yeah, obviously after FP1, there were hopes that that we could do something better, but we didn't.
Looking ahead to the sprint race tomorrow, do you feel that you are in a position that you'll be able to challenge for the win against the McLarens ahead? And also you've got George up there as well.
If we look at FP1, clearly yes. If we look at qualifying, no. So yeah, for now the most representative is quali, so we are not in the best position, but we never know. It's always different on the coming race day.
And it looked as though you guys actually were looking quite strong. How are you feeling after that? Charles sounding a bit disappointed there.
Yeah, I never try and read too much into FP1 because you never know the fuel loads and engine modes the other ones are running. The good news is that the car was feeling better in terms of balance than expected, and obviously the timesheets were reflecting that. But yeah, we went into quali still worried that our rivals could be quick around here, and that's what we saw. No? So yeah, I think anyway we didn't maximize, I think, our package. Even though the lap was clean, it was just a lap with a lot of understeer in the car, and yeah, I just couldn't turn the car basically for the whole lap. And it was also a tough lap because it was my only chance to put a lap, so I couldn't risk it too much with track limits, which meant that yeah, because I missed the previous lap, I just had to make sure I was getting a lap in. I think tomorrow we have potential to improve a lot the car, especially on the soft tire. That is when we will run the car, and that will mean that we can hopefully make some steps forward.
Can you talk us through how that SQ3 unfolded there? Like you mentioned, you only had the time to put in the one lap, so a lot more pressure. Just talk us through the run plan there and why you were left in that position.
Yeah, unfortunately we were on a situation where I went into Sector 1 and Sector 2 with Max in front, and he was preparing his tires, so I had quite a bit of dirty air following him around. On top of that, the car balance was just off. We picked up a lot of understeer from the medium tire, which meant we were just simply struggling to turn the car. Then I needed to cool the tires for a couple of laps, and when I went again, the understeer balance was still there. But I needed to put a lap in, and that was enough for P4. It was not easy under pressure, but also with that balance and the steering of the truck was quite easy into a track limit. But we got it done, and yeah, we just know what we need to improve for tomorrow.
Well, it's clearly not easy out there. Carlos Sainz complaining of understeer, obviously the wind an issue too, and traffic. Similar complaints from a lot of the drivers, Anthony.
Yeah, it's interesting comments, particularly from Carlos Sainz there, Simon, saying how he couldn't dial that understeer out of the car, and also when they changed from the mediums to the soft tyre, the understeer was even more exaggerated. And we heard as well at some point in qualifying that Charles Leclerc was complaining of a bit of graining, and that doesn't bode well for the race, particularly the Grand Prix, but it will be there as well in the sprint, and it was their enemy in Vegas as well.
I was about to say that, yeah, it was, wasn't it? That was the thing.
So if you have understeer in the car on a high-speed circuit like this, when you're on the soft tyres, it's going to open up, and it's the last thing you want. Is you need the front end. We saw drivers dialing in more and more front flap, front wing, to get the car a bit more pointy, to get the front wing further down onto the ground, to give you that extra downforce at the front of the car. And if you get any kind of understeer, it's just going to rip your tyres up.
Yeah, I mean, they're very different tracks, obviously, here and Vegas, but we saw, didn't we, in Vegas, the kind of sheen of dust, if you like, on a very green track, and you're getting the same here, albeit with desert sand as well. I just wonder if that's, you know, it's a repeat issue, albeit with the fact you've got a lot more high-speed corners, which is probably accentuating it.
It's obviously a similar issue in the end part of the issue, but the cause of it is slightly different. Obviously, Vegas is more surface-related. This is a lot smoother of a circuit. In the past, the graining here was caused more by temperature, so now that's not really the case. But if we focus on the positives there of what Carlos had to say, it's that tomorrow, come, you know, Parc Fermé's open again, before qualifying happens for the Grand Prix, they'll be able to maybe correct these issues. So we just want to see them keep this battle going. We saw that they had the potential in FP1, but we've seen more and more that FP1 is maybe not as representative as we sometimes think. So let's just see how it unfolds. Again, tomorrow's another day.
A few pounds, weren't there, in the a few dollars in the swear jar, it has to be said, for Charles Leclerc in Vegas. He was also a bit disgruntled over team radio in that session.
It's a nightmare. I have no idea. Tell me a bit more cars behind.
Yeah, there are quite a few cars, I know. Piastri is 7.
Yeah, I don't...
Piastri is 7.
Yeah. Tell me the cars that are fast, please. That's
yeah, Charles. I know, there are many cars. I'm trying my best. Piastri, 5.
Well, he kept it clean that time, but, I mean, he wasn't the only one. Fernando Alonso was complaining in the last session about it too. How big a issue do you think traffic's going to be come the main qualifying as well? I mean, it just seems to be all talking about that too.
It will be an issue. It'll be an issue in tomorrow's sprint race. It'll be an issue in the main Grand Prix and or the whole way through. As Bernie said during FP1 even, that you need 7 seconds distance between your car and the car in front to not be driving in the turbulent air. The turbulent, because you're going so fast around this track, it leaves a huge wake, a bit like an aeroplane going through it. It leaves that wake of turbulence. If you're anywhere near that, it takes away your grip, and then you start sliding. So you feel it. It's like this invisible barrier in front of you of just driving into that dirty air and losing grip. It's an amazing experience with a car with downforce, but especially on a track like this with such high speed and you're running full downforce, they're hunting for that clear air. And you just don't get it on this track.
So, I mean, extra emphasis then on the pit wall, the race engineer and the strategist to get you out into the clean stuff.
Absolutely, and that's what I was just going to pick up on, is you can tell that he's frustrated with the information that his engineer is giving him. His engineer is frustrated because he's trying to deal with all the numbers and all the information he needs to get across to him. But there was another moment in qualifying, I think it was in SQ1, where he was almost racing Checo across the line. Checo opened up the DRS and he got ahead of him, and they were kind of battling it out, and that's ultimately what cost Checo as well, but it could have cost Charles as well. And on a weekend, as they say, is as important for them as this, they can't be getting caught out by things like traffic.
Okay. Time for us to take a short break. When we come back, we'll hear from the other man on the front row, George Russell.
Mega final lap there to get P2 on the grid for the sprint. Can you talk us through it?
Yeah, it was felt really strong all session. The car was really great, and the circuit is really one of the best. You know, when you get in the groove and that rhythm, it's so fast. I went flat through the high speed for the first time on my final lap in Q3 and confused the engine a little bit. So I lost, I don't know how much I lost, but I had a big recharge on the exit of the corner because I went through it flat. Way too technical for this interview, but that was a bit annoying when it's like, you know, I just nailed it and then I lost a load of speed on the exit. But I think Lando was just a smidge out of reach.
How encouraging is it that the pace is carried over from Vegas last week? And what's your thinking for the sprint? Can you take the fight to Lando tomorrow based on what you just said?
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, they're in a championship fight. We've got nothing to lose. We're going for the big results. So, you know, we'll try and make a good start. Of course, the sprint is just a sprint. You know, we need to put our focus on qualifying as well. And, yeah, so far so good.
Thanks, George. Good luck.
Yeah, it is, and thankfully for the drivers, the temperatures are cooler this year, because we saw exactly what happened last year. I mean, exhaustion. Logan Sargent was an example of that. Bernie Collins joins us as well. Bernie, yeah, what did you make of George Russell? I mean, it's just so good in qualifying, and he's hit a rich seam of form, hasn't he, at the moment?
Yeah, definitely. You know, last week we seen through the sessions he was fastest, and then the race, I think he surpassed all our expectations in terms of the pace. And again today, we didn't see any hints that he was going to be P2 from the practice session we had earlier on today. So he found that little bit extra in that, and that qualifying was all about positioning, getting all the little elements right. It's such a high-speed track here that if you get one little error you really carry through the next few corners.
Lewis was, let's have a look at that, 4/10 of his teammate. What happened there, and what's your assessment of Lewis in qualifying, any kind of qualifying session this season?
I think this one was slightly different. I know that George seems to have the upper hand on Lewis when it comes to qualifying, particularly this year. But actually, throughout that session, he was going quite well, and he had quite a lot of purple sectors. But I think he just left it on the table in Sector 3 on his first attempt at the fast lap in SQ3. He didn't actually complete his second lap, but I don't know what happened exactly in SQ3, but the first 2 sectors were great, and he just lost 3/10 in the end. So it would have been 1/10 had he got it together. But it's true that George does have the edge on him in qualifying, but when it comes to race day, that sort of really unlocks the beast in Lewis.
Okay, let's hear from his boss. Here is Toto Wolff.
Well, Toto, I know you're a numbers man. Car number 63, George Russell, is 63 thousandths of a second behind Lando Norris in that session. Funny the way these things go, isn't it?
I think more fun and interesting was the first. I think it was Q1 when they were exactly the same time, which you must imagine, 2 different cars, 2 different teams on whatever that is, 5 kilometers.
So is it true that you expected, before even Las Vegas, where you finished 1-2, of course, that you expected actually Qatar to be the more competitive showing?
We did, yes. And unfortunately, in FP1, it didn't look like our predictions were right. But at the end, we got it together.
Okay, and what are your thoughts on races, first stint, which is effectively what sprint race is?
It's about taking the lead. I think that we don't have a lot to lose, so George can be dynamic and with good race pace.
So that's critical, is it? If you're in the lead in clean air, then that should make up for any pace deficit, if there is one, between you and the McLaren.
Yeah, I think the cars are so close together also on the long runs that overtaking is quite difficult, I guess.
And just tell us, what was the fallout from Las Vegas? Firstly, when did you finish the celebrations? I mean, we all finished working about 2 a.m., so presumably it didn't last too long. Secondly, did you make it to whatever you had in Las Vegas to do?
What do you mean to do?
Well, you seem to be in a rush with George to get out and go to Las Vegas. I assumed you had a sponsor commitment the next day.
Yeah, to Los Angeles.
Yeah, in Los Angeles. Yeah. Sorry, did I say Las Vegas? Los Angeles, yeah.
No, it was very easy. My elder ones, they study in Los Angeles. I don't get to see them a lot, so my main intention was to make it out there and be there for breakfast.
Okay. And you did?
And I did, yeah. We were there.
Good. And last question about the Constructors' Championship. It's strange in a way because you've won 4 races this year. 5 if you count the disqualification. Well, no, you wouldn't do, but that's 4 races this year. Yet you're stuck in 4th in the Constructors' Championship. What's that a sign of?
Yeah, that the first half of the year was just not good at all. And then, the second part, I guess, we would have been much closer. But I see the advantages. At the end, it's about winning the constructor, and then you really don't care whether it's P2, P3. From a purely sporting point of view, obviously it makes a difference for our employees. But P4 gives us more aero time for next year, particularly with the new regulations. We have about 20% more wind tunnel runs in CFD than the constructor championship. That's the positive.
Okay. Silver linings for the Silver Arrows, they might say. Thank you, Toto.
Yeah, looking on the bright side is Toto Wolff. I wonder if the Red Bull camp are. Let's hear from them, starting with the reigning world champion.
Tight out there, P6 at the end of it. How do you feel about that session?
Yeah, it's just no pace, to be honest. Just slow. I just don't really have the balance to attack, entry to mid-corner. The car is just a bit off, so it makes it really difficult around here. The very high speed is okay, but everything else is not okay, and that makes it just difficult to push. I think P6 is more or less where we should be, maybe even P7 actually. But yeah, it's of course not where you want to be.
What's your thinking for the sprint tomorrow, where your flight might be, and then ahead of the main qualifying session, do you already have some thoughts in mind about what you can change on the car?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the sprint probably, it will be tough to fight the cars around me with just the balance that I have in the car. And then for the other qualifying, yeah, let's see if we can improve the situation a bit. But I don't expect it to suddenly, be turned upside down and that it works. So I don't know. It's not been amazing. Let's say that.
Thanks, Max.
To see you out this early in qualifying, just talk us through that session from your perspective.
Yeah, unfortunately we left a little bit late. We had an issue with one of the anti-roll bars, and then to get my final lap, we were all opening gaps, and then Charles came, and yeah, we were fighting into turn 1 and so on, and lost a couple of tenths there, enough to be knocked out. Unfortunately, it was a shame because I felt like we really progressed with the car from P1 to qualifying. We had a lot more potential, and it's a shame that we just ended up here.
Looking forward to the sprint tomorrow, do you feel that you have the car underneath you, that you're going to be able to make progress through the grid?
I think it's going to be very difficult. I think from now on, we will focus on the rest of the weekend. In such a short race, I don't think there will be a lot that we can do. But yeah, we will try.
Well, Christian, shake that one down for us. What did Max say on the radio? He said, we're not really fast, but we will see tomorrow, which is interesting. What's the thought on that?
Well, we'll see in the race. I mean, the race pace actually in the longer run earlier that we did look reasonable. The problem is starting 6, it's a track that's not the easiest to overtake at, but the temperatures have brought the cars all into different operating windows, so it could be an interesting race.
Okay, tell us post celebrations of Las Vegas where the car is. After Austin and Mexico, it was clear that you'd got over the blip. You'd solved most of the problems with the car. And then obviously Brazil was wet. Max was one.
In the sprint race in the dry, he was very quick,
So we knew that he was quick in the wet. We knew he was quick in the dry. And so where are we now with that? Still with the improvements there?
Yeah, I think we've definitely made steps, certainly in our understanding. I mean, there's 3 corners that we're struggling at compared to Lando today, and 1, 2, and the last corner. The rest of the lap is pretty similar. So it's the medium speed that we need to find a bit of performance over a single lap. But it's not very often that you're running laps and laps in quali to get the tyres up to temperature. So let's see in the race. But well done to Lando. He's done a good lap there, but hopefully the race can be a bit closer.
Okay, and now onto the lighter stuff. Tell us about the celebrations post Las Vegas. I hear Helmut Marko called it a day at 4:30 a.m., which, considering we didn't stop work until 2, isn't very much of a night out.
Well, it's very, very uncharacteristic of Helmut. No.
When did you finish? I think Max carried on all day, didn't he?
Yeah, Max winning a title in Vegas is a good and a bad thing. I half expected him to go missing, like a certain movie, but he turned up here in Qatar in time, and I think he rightly celebrated with with some of the guys and girls from the team, and the rest of us all were on flights back to Europe or straight here. So
you're telling me, don't disappoint me. You're telling me you weren't in the club singing Wonderwall or Queen, We Are the Champions? Come on.
We're saving that, mate. We're saving that to celebrate with everybody at the end of the year. So yeah, a glass of wine at 40,000 feet on the way home, and back in the office the next morning.
Well, it's rock and roll, Formula One style, 2024.
All right. No tigers have turned up in the freight. Mike Tyson seems happy, so everything's good.
All righty, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Honestly, James Hunt, what would he be thinking about that? But look, clearly Max was honouring that spirit, and you won't blame him if there's a couple of cobwebs, but I'm not sure there is. He's come back here and he just didn't have the car underneath him, but he clearly enjoyed himself out there in Vegas.
Yeah, and rightly so, to be 4 times world champion and to have done it this year in the style he has, the consistency that he's shown through the year, at times not with the fastest car. I think when I look through it, apart from Melbourne, which he didn't finish, the lowest he's finished is P6. So to have that consistency, that's where the championship was won. It's not necessarily the wins at the beginning of the year, it's the consistency when the car hasn't even been there. And that's what he continues to show, and that's what will continue to stand him well in the championship.
If they are to finish in third in the Constructors, which looks pretty likely at the moment with the way the car is performing and the way that Checo's performing, let's come on to him in a minute, but the extra wind tunnel and CFD time that Toto was talking about, they're going to get those gains next year against McLaren and Ferrari, and you wouldn't bet against both of those teams actually to make it really count.
And it's going to make the difference. So whilst you kind of sit here and think, well, we came into this weekend thinking they're still within a fighting chance mathematically of winning the Constructors' title, looking at these results today, particularly Checo, it's not looking likely that they're going to make any dent on McLaren nor Ferrari. So the question is, what do they rock up for the next 2 weeks? And I guess it is about, figuring out what they're going to do for next year, seeing what they can still develop, learning as much as they can wherever they are still having those gaps. But of course, if they finish third, as you say, more wind tunnel time, and that's what they need.
It's hard to watch Checo in qualifying at the moment, isn't it? Lord knows where his head is at the moment.
Yeah, it's disappointing there. We've seen that, that session was difficult with traffic, and where you're on track was so important. We've seen that a few times through the year with not quite the right track positioning, but even if we go back to P1, in P1 looked significantly off the pace as well. Both cars did. Now, Max made a good step forward into qualifying. Checo didn't make that step. There was no point of the lap that looked like it was really going to threaten anything. It wasn't one clear mistake. It was a few things and a bit of the positioning, like I say. So it is very difficult to recover from that, and it will be very difficult tomorrow in the sprint, especially given where we think the car paces are.
Yeah, look, I feel for him, there's no doubt about it, but he has got a contract for next year. Dr. Marco's talked about Yuki Tsunoda perhaps not having the consistency to make the step up to Red Bull, so that leaves Liam Lawson if Checo is to go, and, well, if it was auditioning for next year, he did a good effort today. 9th, let's hear from him.
Through to SQ3 there, how did you find that session?
A big step, honestly. We were not very fast earlier, so you just make it more difficult for yourself. We had to put a lot of effort in personally as well to make the step, but it was cool to do that. And it's a shame we got a lap to lead it in Q3. It's one position, but yeah, it's obviously always all makes a difference. So, but honestly, happy with the step we made.
Looking ahead to tomorrow to the sprint race, no pit stops, of course, that condensed format as well. How confident are you feeling about being able to make your way up the grid? Do you think there is more to extract in the car?
I mean, there's always more to extract, and I think we'll obviously work on that overnight. We did a brief long run earlier, everybody did, so I think we'll go through those numbers and see where everybody's at, and try and move forward. Obviously, that one position is going to hurt us tomorrow, because now we have to try and make up two for any points. So obviously, it's very close. I think it's Alpine, Haas and myself all in a row. So obviously we're fighting each other for the Constructors, so it's important.
Thank you very much. Good luck tomorrow.
Yeah, there's a lot on the line. He was 9th, then he had that deleted, so 10th. I've got it wrong. Sorry, everybody. But let's react. Let's finish on that conversation, on that topic now. I mean, does he look like the favourite? If Checo's to go, is it Liam Lawson that gets moved upstairs?
It does seem like that, and to be honest, I don't know why Yuki's not being considered. I know that he's being given a test at the end of the season, so let's see what happens with that test and if that plays a significant role in Yuki's potential future at Red Bull. But I wonder, have they seen enough from Liam Lawson at this point in time to be able to say he's the right fit for that second seat at Red Bull? The problem is, in motorsport, it's never just about pure speed, consistency. There's always a package. It always needs to be, all the dots need to connect, and you need to be the full package to be the right fit for the team. So let's see who that ends up being.
And also, I imagine it's terrifying knowing you're going to go up. Whoever's going to go up, you relish it. You're testing yourself against the best. But Max Verstappen, destroyer of careers.
Yeah, definitely.
Up the other driver.
That's definitely true, to go up against Max in a car that he's clearly much more comfortable in than any of his teammates have been for quite a long time. It's been a number of years between, probably Ricciardo was the last person that, really was close to him in that. So it's got to be a big step. But that's why they're in that team. They've got to be ready to make that step up. Any of them would relish the challenge. We can always look at two people like that, and we know how they compare to each other, but we're not sure what the delta is to someone like Max. So these guys are so self-confident a lot of the time, and they've got to feel that they can prove it, and it's got to be worth the challenge.
Thank you both. Pleasure, as always. And thanks to you at home for watching this evening.